Four of the world's most trusted automakers secretly sold millions of engines they knew were designed to fail. GM, Toyota, Honda, and Hyundai built their reputations on reliability, but now they stand exposed for engine disasters that cost consumers billions of dollars and put lives at risk. Manufacturing defects, cover-ups, and a pattern of putting profits over safety shocked even industry insiders when the evidence they tried to hide finally came to light. What you're about to discover will change how you view these companies forever. Engines that were literally born dying, corporate executives facing criminal charges, and the biggest automotive scandal of the modern era. This is that story. General Motors created their North Star engine disaster and watched it plague Cadillac owners for nearly 2 decades. Between 1993 and 2011, GM installed what they marketed as premium engine technology in luxury Cadillacs, but internal testing revealed a fatal flaw that GM knew about from day one. The North Star engine used an aluminum block with steel head bolts, and that combination created different thermal expansion rates that spelled disaster. Normal operation heated the engine, the aluminum expanded faster than the steel, and the head bolt threads failed as a result. Coolant leaks followed, then overheating, then catastrophic engine failure. What made this particularly shocking was that GM knew this would happen. Their own engineers documented the thermal expansion problem during development, and the company decided to proceed anyway because they calculated that warranty costs would be less expensive than redesigning the engine. Cadillac owners faced repair bills of $3,000 to $5,000 or more because the entire engine had to be removed to fix the problem. These weren't isolated incidents, but systematic failure affecting hundreds of thousands of vehicles, and GM had planned it that way from the beginning. But GM's engine problems didn't stop with the North Star disaster. Their active fuel management system, introduced in 2005, created another nightmare for owners of trucks and SUVs with 5.3-litre and 6.0-litre V8 engines that would haunt them for years. The AFM system was designed to improve fuel economy by shutting down half the engine's cylinders during light load conditions, which sounds brilliant until you realize what it actually did to the engines. Lifter failures became routine, oil consumption became excessive, and premature engine wear turned these vehicles into money pits. The lifters would stick or fail completely, leading to engine knock, reduced power, and eventual engine replacement that cost more than many of these vehicles were worth. Multiple class action lawsuits forced GM into settlements worth millions of dollars, and owners reported oil consumption so severe they had to add quarts of oil between changes. Many engines failed completely before 100,000 miles, which meant GM had essentially sold time bombs to unsuspecting customers. The Ecotec timing chain disasters added another layer to GM's engine catastrophes. GM's 2.0-litre and 2.4-litre Ecotec engines suffered from premature timing chain stretch and tensioner failures, and the timing chains would stretch beyond specifications, causing engine timing to shift and leading to poor performance, engine noise, and in severe cases, catastrophic internal damage. The timing chain problem was particularly insidious because it often occurred without warning, which meant drivers would experience a slight engine noise one day, and by the next day, their engine was destroyed. The interference design of these engines meant that if the timing chain jumped or broke, the pistons would collide with the valves, requiring complete engine replacement and leaving owners with repair bills that often exceeded the value of their vehicles. GM was not the only company hiding a nightmare from their customers. Toyota, the brand synonymous with reliability, was secretly dealing with an engine crisis that would eventually cost them over $3 billion and damage their reputation for decades to come. Between 1997 and 2002, Toyota installed engines in approximately 3.5 million vehicles that had a deadly flaw they kept hidden from buyers. These engines produced excessive oil sludge that slowly strangled them to death, and the affected engines included the 3.0-litre 1M ZFE V6 found in Camrys, Avalons, and Lexus models, plus the 2.2-litre 5SFE four-cylinder engine. What investigators uncovered was staggering in its scope and deception. These engines were producing oil sludge at rates far beyond normal, even with proper maintenance, and the sludge would clog oil passages, starve engine components of lubrication, and eventually cause complete engine seizure. Drivers would be cruising down the highway when suddenly their engine would lock up without warning, leaving them stranded and facing massive repair bills. Toyota initially blamed owners for poor maintenance, claiming they weren't changing their oil frequently enough. But internal documents revealed that Toyota knew the engines had design flaws that accelerated sludge formation. The oil drainback holes were too small, oil passages were inadequately designed, and the engines ran hotter than they should have, which Toyota's engineers had documented during development. The company's own testing showed that even with proper maintenance, these engines would develop catastrophic sludge buildup. Yet Toyota continued selling vehicles with these engines for years, while denying there was a problem. When the evidence became overwhelming, Toyota was forced to announce a $3.4 billion extended warranty program in 2007, and this wasn't just a recall, but an admission that they had sold millions of defective engines and tried to cover it up. Toyota's engine disasters didn't end there, because their two AZFE engine, used in Camrys, RAV4s, and Scion TCs from 2006 to 2011, had another serious flaw that would cost them dearly. Excessive oil consumption due to faulty piston ring design meant owners reported having to add multiple quarts of oil between changes, and many engines seized when oil levels dropped too low. The piston rings were designed incorrectly, allowing oil to burn off during normal operation. And Toyota extended warranties to 150,000 miles and offered engine rebuilds or replacements, but only after class action lawsuits forced their hand. Even in recent years, Toyota hasn't escaped engine problems because in 2018 and 2019, they recalled 1.8 million RAV4 and Camry vehicles for potential engine fires caused by low-pressure fuel pump failures that could fail suddenly, causing the engine to stall at highway speeds or, in some cases, catch fire. Toyota's meltdown was not even the strangest failure in this automotive disaster story. Honda, another brand built on reliability, shocked the automotive world with engine problems that their own engineers said should have been impossible. And that impossibility made the situation even more troubling for customers and regulators alike. Variable timing control actuator problems affected numerous Honda and Acura V6 engines from 2008 to 2017. And these actuators were designed to optimize engine timing for performance and efficiency, but they were failing at alarming rates. The actuators would stick, fail electronically, or break apart internally. And what made this particularly troubling was that Honda's VTC system was considered one of the most advanced in the industry. The failures caused engine noise, reduced performance, and check engine lights. But more concerning was that Honda seemed genuinely surprised by the widespread nature of the problem. Internal documents showed that Honda's engineers couldn't initially explain why the actuators were failing, because the components met all design specifications and passed laboratory testing. But they were failing in real-world conditions at rates far beyond statistical norms. Honda's most shocking engine disaster involved their 1.5-litre turbocharged engines in the CR-V and Civic from 2016 to 2019. And the problem seemed almost impossible to believe. Gasoline was somehow mixing with the engine oil in cold weather conditions, which meant owners reported that their engine oil levels were actually increasing between oil changes, and the oil smelled strongly of gasoline. Oil dilution reduced lubrication properties and could cause severe engine damage, and in some cases, the oil level rose so high it triggered engine problems and potential safety issues. Honda's response revealed the complexity of modern engine design because the problem was caused by the interaction between the turbocharger, direct injection system, and cold weather operation, and unburned fuel would condense on cylinder walls and drain into the oil pan, diluting the oil with gasoline. The company implemented software updates to change engine warm-up procedures and extended oil change intervals. But many owners remained concerned about long-term engine damage. Honda extended warranties and offered additional monitoring, but the incident damaged confidence in their turbocharged engine technology and left many customers wondering what other impossible problems might be lurking in their vehicles. Honda's 3.5-litre V6 engines also suffered from timing belt tensioner and water pump failures that created another category of disaster for owners. These engines used an interference design, meaning that if the timing belt failed, the pistons would collide with the valves, causing catastrophic engine damage requiring complete replacement. Timing belt failures often occurred without warning, leaving drivers stranded with destroyed engines, and repair costs frequently exceeded the value of the vehicle, effectively totaling cars that should have had years of life remaining. Honda knew about the timing belt issues, but continued using the interference design, which meant they were essentially selling vehicles with built-in destruction mechanisms that could activate without warning. Honda's shocking collapse did not prepare anyone for what was happening at Hyundai and Kia, and what started as isolated engine failures in 2015 exploded into the largest automotive safety scandal of the decade. Criminal charges against executives and over 2.9 million vehicles were involved in a crisis that refused to die and kept growing worse with each investigation. The Theta 2 engine crisis centered on 2.0-litre and 2.4-litre gasoline direct injection engines installed in Sonatas, Optimas, Sorrentos, Sportages, and other popular models from 2011 to 2019. And these engines were failing catastrophically, often without warning, and in some cases catching fire. The technical cause was shocking in its simplicity and negligence, because during manufacturing, metal debris was left inside the engines. Metal debris came from the machining process where connecting rod bearings were manufactured, and instead of proper cleaning, the debris remained in the engines when they were assembled. Over time, this metal debris would circulate through the engine oil, causing accelerated wear on the connecting rod bearings, and the bearings would fail, causing engine knock, loss of power, and complete engine seizure that sometimes led to fires. What made this scandal particularly damaging was Hyundai and Kia's response to the growing crisis. Internal documents revealed that the companies knew about the engine problems years before they issued recalls, and they had been tracking warranty claims and customer complaints, but failed to notify federal regulators as required by law. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration opened an investigation in 2017 that revealed the extent of the cover-up, and NHTSA discovered that Hyundai and Kia had identified the engine problems as early as 2012, but delayed recalls and failed to properly notify the agency about safety defects. The investigation expanded multiple times as more evidence emerged, and by 2020, NHTSA had identified over 2.9 million affected vehicles, making it one of the largest automotive safety investigations in history. Financial consequences were staggering and kept mounting as the investigation expanded. In November 2020, Hyundai and Kia agreed to a $137 million civil penalty with NHTSA and committed to a $758 million settlement for safety improvements and monitoring, and a $760 million class action settlement was approved to compensate affected vehicle owners for engine replacements, extended warranties, and software updates. The story didn't end with financial penalties, because in 2023, 3 former Hyundai executives were indicted on federal criminal charges including conspiracy and wire fraud for concealing the engine defects from regulators and consumers. This marked the first time automotive executives faced criminal prosecution for safety cover-ups in decades, and the indictments allege that the executives knew about the engine problems but deliberately concealed them to avoid costly recalls and protect the company's reputation, while they were accused of lying to federal investigators and destroying evidence related to the engine failures. While these four giants battled exploding engines, federal regulators were mounting the most aggressive automotive safety investigation in modern history. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, traditionally reactive to automotive problems, launched proactive investigations that would fundamentally change how automakers handle safety defects and communicate with government agencies. NHTSA investigations revealed systematic problems across the industry, and the agency discovered that multiple manufacturers had similar problems with disclosure requirements, quality control, and communication protocols with federal regulators. Congressional hearings were held focusing on manufacturer disclosure requirements and the need for stronger penalties for safety violations, and how subcommittee members questioned why it took years for some of these engine problems to result in recalls and whether current penalties were sufficient to deter future violations. The regulatory response went beyond individual recalls and began requiring enhanced monitoring systems, improved quality control procedures, and better communication protocols. NHTSA also started conducting more proactive investigations rather than waiting for consumer complaints to accumulate, which meant manufacturers could no longer count on hiding problems until they became too big to ignore. Consent agreements were negotiated, requiring manufacturers to implement comprehensive safety improvements, and these agreements included independent monitoring, regular reporting requirements, and substantial financial penalties for future violations. The days of calculating whether recalls were cheaper than lawsuits were coming to an end, as regulators made it clear that hiding safety defects would cost more than fixing them up front. Regulators were not the only ones demanding answers because the human cost of these engine failures extended far beyond stranded motorists and expensive repairs. Manufacturing workers, dealers, and consumers all paid the price for these corporate decisions that prioritized profits over safety and left everyone else to deal with the consequences. Factory workers reported pressure to meet production quotas even when quality control issues were identified, and internal documents from multiple manufacturers showed that workers had raised concerns about manufacturing processes but were told to continue production to meet deadlines. Dealership service departments were overwhelmed with warranty claims and customer complaints, and many dealers reported that they were not properly informed about known engine problems, leaving them unable to properly diagnose and repair vehicles. Consumer advocacy groups documented cases where engine failures caused accidents or left drivers stranded in dangerous situations, and highway breakdowns due to sudden engine failure put drivers and passengers at risk, while some incidents resulted in injuries. The financial impact on consumers extended beyond repair costs, because many affected vehicles suffered significant depreciation once engine problems became widely known, and owners found themselves underwater on loans for vehicles with little resale value due to known defects. Insurance claims related to engine failures created additional complications because some insurers initially denied claims related to manufacturing defects, arguing that mechanical failures weren't covered under standard policies. Families who had bought these vehicles based on reliability ratings found themselves facing thousands of dollars in repairs or replacement costs while dealing with manufacturers who initially denied responsibility and insurance companies who refused to help. What investigators uncovered during these scandals was a pattern of corporate decision-making that prioritized profits over safety across multiple manufacturers, and internal emails and documents revealed that executives were aware of engine problems but chose to delay action to minimize financial impact. Cost-benefit analyses showed that companies calculated the expense of recalls against potential lawsuit settlements and chose what they perceived as the less expensive option. And these calculations often underestimated the long-term damage to brand reputation and customer loyalty. Executive compensation structures at some companies created incentives to minimize warranty costs and avoid recalls that could impact quarterly earnings. and performance bonuses were tied to metrics that encouraged short-term thinking over long-term safety considerations. The legal consequences extended beyond financial settlements because several manufacturers faced federal investigations that could have resulted in criminal charges for corporate executives, and the threat of personal liability changed how companies approach safety decisions. Board of directors at affected companies faced shareholder lawsuits alleging inadequate oversight of safety issues, and independent directors were forced to implement enhanced governance procedures and safety monitoring systems. The corporate culture that had allowed these problems to develop and fester for years was finally being challenged by regulators, shareholders, and customers who demanded accountability. Engine disasters at GM, Toyota, Honda, and Hyundai fundamentally changed the automotive industry's approach to quality control and safety reporting, and enhanced manufacturing processes were implemented across the industry to prevent similar failures. Quality control procedures were overhauled at multiple manufacturers. New testing protocols were developed to identify potential problems earlier in the development process, and statistical analysis systems were improved to detect warranty claim patterns that might indicate safety defects. Communication protocols with federal regulators were enhanced as companies implemented new systems to ensure that potential safety issues are reported promptly to NHTSA and other regulatory agencies around the world. Consumer advocacy groups gained more influence in the regulatory process, and the engine scandals demonstrated the importance of independent monitoring and analysis of automotive safety issues that couldn't be controlled by manufacturer public relations departments. The financial impact on the industry was substantial because combined settlements, penalties, and warranty costs exceeded several $billion across the four manufacturers. These costs demonstrated that attempting to hide safety defects is more expensive than addressing them proactively. And the criminal charges against Hyundai executives sent a clear message that individual accountability would be enforced when companies chose to cover up safety problems. Engine disasters at General Motors, Toyota, Honda, and Hyundai represent more than just mechanical failures because they reveal a systematic breakdown in corporate responsibility that put millions of drivers at risk. GM's engines that were designed to fail, Toyota's oil sludge cover-up, Honda's impossible failures, and Hyundai's criminal conspiracy exposed the dark side of an industry built on trust that had been systematically betrayed by the companies consumers relied upon. The evidence shows that these weren't isolated incidents or unforeseeable problems, but the result of corporate decisions that prioritized profits over safety, executives who concealed known defects, and a culture that treated consumer safety as a cost center rather than a fundamental responsibility. Financial penalties exceeded $1.5 billion in settlements and fines, but the real cost was measured in lost consumer confidence, stranded drivers, and the fundamental betrayal of trust between automakers and the people who depend on their products. These scandals forced the entire automotive industry to confront uncomfortable truths about quality control, safety reporting, and corporate accountability, and the regulatory changes that followed created new standards for transparency and safety that continue to shape the industry today. For consumers, these revelations serve as a reminder that even the most trusted brands are capable of putting profits before people. And the next time you hear about a recall or safety investigation, remember the lessons learned from these engine disasters. Sometimes the most shocking truth is the one companies never wanted you to discover. And if this investigation opened your eyes to the reality behind automotive safety scandals, make sure you subscribe for more revelations about the stories the industry doesn't want you to know. The evidence is out there, and it's time consumers had access to the truth that these companies spent billions trying to hide.